The meeting will come to order and we'll go with the roll call.
Cosmo?
Yes.
Adels?
Yes.
Vitelli?
Here.
Durbin?
Here.
Heaton?
Here.
Ronnie?
Yes.
Whistler?
Here. All right, thank you. Tonight, we'll have a variety of issues to cover this evening as noted in the agenda, and at the end, we'll have a public comment period where you'll be invited to share your thoughts. The first thing on the agenda is the use of the city-owned land permit for Big Sky Gravel at Coal Miners Park in August of this year. So, Kelly, would you like to introduce this?
Sure. So Jennifer Drinkwalter submitted this application a couple of meetings ago, and last time we had some further questions, mostly from new council members. So I asked Jennifer to come today to make sure that we could get some questions answered, and then so Jennifer, if you want to, or I guess is that I'll make a motion to approve the Big Sky Gravel event.
Second.
There's a second discussion. Is there any other questions that people wanted to ask Jennifer?
Well, I thought there were 3 questions asked during the last discussion, so I didn't take a tally of them, but I remember somebody asking about the certification or the permit of the beer vendor, alcohol vendor.
Mm-hmm. So, and Jennifer said that it's one-legged magpies.
Yes, we're having catered, so it would be under a catering, so under catering, or under their permit. Is that, we're not, the question that was in the text to me was, I think, was they were wondering if it was being sold or given away. So it was being sold by a caterer on site.
I think another one of the questions was, what's for sale?
At this point, nothing, but there could be some stuff for sale, and of course, we would do the city's 4% if there were anything for sale.
And I don't remember what the last question was. Did anybody?
I don't remember either.
Whoever asked.
I had asked about just the intention to get insurance. And I assume that happens, obviously you're going to pursue that after we approve.
Mm-hmm. I do all my event insurance. I historically, and we could change it if you guys change your parameters, but I do everything in May because that's when we know our numbers, because insurance for events is based on numbers of people, of the events I run, because I run ticketed events. And then once I have that number thereabout, then I do the insurance. And my insurance is completely non-refundable. Like, so if I have to cancel for a force majeure even, I don't get that back. So I try to do it within 30 days of my first event. My first event is out in Elk Basin, east of here, for my 24-hour gravel. So I have to secure all my events at one time. Yeah. So I usually do that in May of the spring.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah. But happy to comply with any new changes or whatever you guys decide.
I guess the main thing would just be to make sure that the city is listed.
Yep, and actually, the city is listed on automatically on mine,
Okay.
just because of, I'm a city, I live in the city, and all of my stuff is stored in the city, so.
Are there any more questions or comments? Would you like to vote? Roll call?
Adels? Yes. Vitelli?
Yes.
Durbin?
Yes.
Heaton?
Yes.
Ronnie? Yes. Whistler?
Yes.
Mayor, may I add one thing?
Yes.
I should have said this sooner. Can we just make sure that the written answers that Jennifer provided to us between the last meeting and this one end up in the record, so if the public wants to see them, they can? Great. I just like having that as an addendum to the original application would be awesome.
Okay,
We can find them again if we need them.
thank you. All right, the third item, is appointing members to the Resort Tax Committee up for action. And the Resort Tax Committee requested that the existing committee be formally appointed, as they served in those roles previously as their initial roles ended. So I would like to formally appoint Tom Kuntz, Jeremy Battles, Lori Elliott, and Tim Weimer to the Resort Tax Committee with Jody Ronning as the council representative. That it leaves one vacancy, I believe, which will be advertised and selected hopefully at the next meeting. So may I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Any discussion?
I'm gonna need to abstain for obvious reasons.
With no discussion, then may we have roll call?
Battles, abstain. Fratelli,
Yes.
Durbin,
Yes.
Eaton,
Yes.
Ronnie,
Yes.
Whistler.
Yes.
And the fourth item here for action is we have an opening on the planning board. Teresa Whistler has volunteered to serve. And so may I have a motion appointing her?
I move to appoint Teresa Whistler to the planning board.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Battles,
Yes.
Fratelli,
Yes.
Durbin,
Yes.
Eaton,
Yes.
Ronnie,
Yes.
Whistler.
I don't think so.
The fifth item is the Urban Renewal District Ordinance Update. So, this item, there's a motion to reconsider this item because it failed a provisional adoption of ordinance number 956, Urban Renewal District, after a public hearing on the first reading, denying another public hearing on the second reading. But the bottom line here is that the motion to reconsider was made, and because additional discussion among council and the second public hearing could result in a more thorough evaluation of the ordinance and more informed decision among the council concerning any potential amendments or final adoption of a date certain of February 8th. So the purpose of this during a work session is we want to make sure that everybody has the information that they need in order to participate in making this decision. We're here to answer any questions that anybody has during public comments, not specifically today, but we want to make sure that we provide answers for you at the next meeting. We value your input, and so that's what we're going to do with that. It's attached to this week's agenda. If you'd like to go back and read it, you can reference it online. And Courtney, can you provide us with a little of the background on this project and what the planning department has done to include public comment?
Yeah, I can absolutely do that.
Just a
So,
minute.
Wait just a second, Courtney. We can barely hear you. Hold on just a minute.
okay. My bad, I turned it down.
There we go.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, so the Urban Renewal District and the TIF district was kind of jump-started because we saw this need in the community for affordable housing, workforce housing. You know, we hear people when they say that they can't find housing for their employees, or at least housing that their employees can find. I know of people personally, and so there's this urgent need that was felt for finding a way to help reduce the costs on developers in a market where everything is increasing. And so James had worked with an urban renewal district in Laurel, so that's just how he was aware of it. But obviously we couldn't just draw boundaries on a map and say this is where we want it. So we using Montana code, there's the urban renewal law, and that's very specific on what you can and can't do with an urban renewal district. Unfortunately, we do have to use that term blight. It's kind of residual from the 1940s when Montana started using that. It was kind of a national term, and it's just sort of carried over. But you do have to show that there's at least 3 areas that follow the state's definition of blight, whether that's incomplete streets, buildings that have, that need to be rehabilitated, restored. There's all of these different reasons that have been laid out in the plan. So that's one of the reasons why we went with the area in the northern part of the community. Another reason is because we know that there is potential development in the next several years in the primarily northern community entrance. So before this urban renewal plan and the necessity of blight was really brought to city council, it has been through the planning board, and so they did vote and said that it was conforming with our growth policy, with our zoning regulations. In the fall, James and I had just sort of an informal public meeting right before we were really jumping into the urban renewal district, where we invited, I think it's about 60 property owners that would be in the urban renewal district. We invited all of them to come to City Hall, and James had a presentation for them. And so that presentation is available on the
Courtney, can you hear me?
She said she has bad service sometimes at her house.
We lost you.
Courtney, are you still there? Well,
Am I-
until she gets, oh,
Oh,
all right, we're here.
Okay, sorry. I just got kicked off my internet. But I don't know where I got kicked off at, but I just want to say that there is information from that public meeting. I have the recording if anyone's interested in kind of listening in on what was there. There were a couple of city council people, and Dave Westwood was there, who is also our planning board city council person at the time. So if anyone's interested in how to find that information on the website, or if you're having trouble finding it, let me know and I can provide more of that background information as well of what, because the minutes are in the plan, just very, generically of what people were saying. But if you want to listen to the recording, I can make that available by request. So yeah, if anyone has questions, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to do any sort of research that I need for you. I James very much had the lead on this, but I was kind of with him helping put some things together, and yeah, I'm happy to address anything for anyone.
Thank you, Courtney. So I'd like to open it up for discussion at the table, if anybody has any comments. Yes, Teresa.
We were reading the introduction to this. I don't believe we put a date certain of February 8th
Oh,
on
is that
approval. We discussed it and determined it wasn't necessary,
Okay.
as far as I can recall. Does anybody else? I know we thought we would have two readings,
Mhm.
first reading, second reading with the new sitting council. And we did not put, I think we dropped out the date certain on it before
That's
we
what I
approved
recall.
it. We amended it without the
Okay.
date certain.
And again, the purpose of having this mentioned at this meeting is to make sure this is a big project, and we want it to benefit everyone. And we also want to hear all the comments that we can gather. Your comments are important to us. And again, at the end of the meeting, you'll have an opportunity if you'd like to make a public comment, and you're more than welcome to contact your ward representative to write a letter to the clerk, who will circulate it to all of us. And, we'll give it all of our consideration or when we discuss it at the next meeting, if it'll be this coming meeting, possibly the next one, but you'll know from the agenda. Yes?
Yes, I'm wondering if, we could kind of walk through what are those steps so that we're all very clear on, the first reading, second reading, and then in between, if there's anything that maybe we could, if there's any questions of the public, that anything that anybody would like to have clarified that we could work out, in addition to the information that's already been brought forward. So would we have the first reading at the next council meeting, is what I'm hearing, right?
Courtney, is that appropriate to have the next discussion at the next meeting for the first reading of the ordinance?
For the first public hearing of it?
Yes.
Yeah, and by that state law, we have to have one public hearing before city council votes on it, where we invite all of those property owners again to the public hearing. So as long as I have the ability to get it in the paper and typed emails mailed to the property owners within 10 days, then I think we're good.
Is that sufficient?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
All right.
Good to know.
Thank you, Courtney. Yeah, wait, one more question. Yeah.
No, actually, I don't know if this one's for Courtney. There's a couple of things that come to mind are, I'm not sure, and so I'm new council member, and I cannot remember, maybe Pete knows, Jody. Did the company that put the plan together, were they present at all for the community to interact with previously? I feel like that is something that I would appreciate. I mean, given the fact that, if the council, if the community has questions that we as council members and lay people cannot answer, to have someone there to help put the plan together.
I believe one of the guys was on during one of the meetings. I don't
During
remember
one of
which meeting it was.
So if we're going to have future meetings on this topic, maybe invite that person back. In addition to, I'd love to have the planning board present at both of those meetings as well. Again, because those folks are the experts in the room and can address some of the things that might come up that
From the planning board.
from the planning
Well,
board.
Teresa is the representative, so she would be able to answer those questions.
Tim's here too.
Yeah, I was part of all of those meetings. So, I've been to all of them, and I don't want to say I helped, but I had a lot of conversations with James while it was being written. So I'm fairly familiar with it.
Thank you. That would be great.
Yes, but just to clarify, it was not outsourced, it was shared for opinion and recommendation.
And James understood that it was quite an undertaking, and he reached out to somebody who had been through it and successful with it, which was a very stiff move on his part. I think it created a better plan. It seemed to, yeah, it was James and Courtney still did the bulk of the work.
Yeah, and one of the planning board members had specifically asked to see more of, if we saw this much growth, how would it affect our taxes? And that's kind of where James then sought that sort of outside expertise, was somebody who could put that together better, because of the amount of time and the expertise required for that as well. So that's also where those guys that were helping the company that was contracted out was primarily contracted out to help with those estimated tax values.
Okay. That's who I was referring to. Thank you. Yeah.
Any further discussion? Okay. All right. So if anybody has any questions, please let us know during the public comment time, because we do want to hear your concerns. Or you can alternatively get a hold of a council rep or send Lonnie a letter, and she'll circulate it to all of us. The next item is a city council update. My goal for working with the council is to make things as streamlined and efficient as possible. As you know, serving on the council takes time, and we value the various contributions the council members make, along with their often busy schedules. While it's rare we can make everybody happy, we do our best to listen and continue to improve our course of business. Currently, we are continuing as the former mayor did, with one council member assigned to each department. That person works with the department heads to understand what they do and what the current issues are, and then they have some expertise to share their thoughts with the public, me, and the city council. We're also trying out a new position with Jody Ronning serving as an emerging issues point person. With that, I'd like to hear from each council person what they prefer and what they suggest. And we'll start with Pete, and we'll do a round robin twice, with the goal being we can't get together under Montana open meeting rules. So this is where we have to do that. So you can listen, and if you have any suggestions, then you can make them at the end or send us a note. So we'll do this twice, and then we're all on the same page, and we can move forward from there. So Pete?
Yes, I have stated in limited emails and communication that I prefer a one-on-one relationship between a council person and a department head, and that I believe that should be rotated at the minimum 6 months and the maximum 1 year. And I believe it should be a council seat slot, SLOT, so that if we have a change in council people, that the new council person would just slide into that slot and continue that rotation, so that there wouldn't be any interruption of continuity. So I am not in favor of the committee approach. I am in favor of the one person to one department approach.
Thank you. Teresa?
I actually see benefits to both. I know that just about everybody here, whether you're paid or not, is working full-time every day. Committees would be very difficult to cover, in addition to the department assignments and things like that in addition. I'm not sure. I think that informally I volunteered to back up or join Terry in her assignment with Public Works, because there is a transition of knowledge and there's a lot that can be built from and carried forward. I don't believe 6 months is a good idea, because there's a learning curve no matter where we plug ourselves in, and to keep that changing would be, I think, ineffective. You, just by the time you get up to speed in something, you're going to rotate into something else. I just don't think that's efficient. Planning board assignment, for instance, you don't want to change somebody out in 6 months. It takes years to come up to speed with the things that they deal with. And so it's as far as committee, I think that we could back each other adequately as volunteering to transition and step in and help each other out. I don't know that we need to formalize that.
Thank you. Terry?
So I'd like to kind of echo what Teresa's saying, and the one thing I sort of feel like is a lot of this is with the changes that we have with city council, you know, possibly every 2 years, a mayor every 2 years, we need to build that continuity and that knowledge base to be able to be effective. So I would think that, you know, a year or even longer if it works for the department head. And that's because some of these departments are fairly complicated, like I know working with Jim with Public Works. It's a big job, and it's really important. As we always say, we want to be able to have clean water and flush our toilets. It's not sexy, but it's, you know, it's really important. So I think along the line what Teresa was saying, I like the idea of the liaisons, but then I also like the idea of the informal committees based on kind of like what we did with the events committee, where there's a need for a concentrated effort to solve a problem. So you pick the best people to address that. So you're sharing ideas, not always, you know, people are on the same page, but it's a good, I think, exchange of thoughts to a resolution. So I kind of like the idea of liaisons and then committees formed on really based on what the, you know, what the priorities are for the mayor and the city council.
Thank you. Jen?
I think I have a couple of different definitions than, what was previously mentioned. I prefer, the idea of having standing city council committees that are appointed by the council president as outlined in the council procedures for Montana, you know, like many do. I know that we have something different right now. And I don't know that I'm necessarily arguing against not having liaisons or against having liaisons. I guess what I'm saying is, in particular, my experience as a resident here prior to being on council, when it came to regular things that the council deals with. So not thinking, I know your point, which is like, when we have special topics that come up that need special attention, we can organize committees around those topics. What I'm talking about is regular standing committees. This community used to have those, and we can think about what form or fashion those could go in, but the idea would be there would be around 4 of them. There would be 3 of us to each one, so each one of us would have 2 committees. And those are standing committees that deal with the regular issues that this body has to do research on, and extensive research. And we're not talking about stuff that we can handle in a 2-hour working session. We're talking about things like a budget committee, and gathering input from the community as a part of that process, gathering input from all the department heads as a part of that process, working that out. And as a resident, what I have seen is that the current model that we have, my question is who's doing the research on those topics regularly and making sure that they are well-researched far in advance so that this body isn't learning about details or asking questions about things they're going to vote on next council session, but that all of that research is done and is out in the public, and the public has had a chance to interact far in advance. And in my mind, as a planner and just someone who appreciates knowing far in advance what's coming down the pipe and making sure that the community has had a chance to have input, that requires a lot of effort and energy. And council members have done it in the past. I'm not saying it's not work, but it is related to the fact that we have a 2-hour working session today. That wasn't the case when they had committees. It was 2 meetings where there were action items, and then this 2-hour working session, you know, a lot of this conversation happened behind the scenes and involved more of the public, and you could invite experts to those committees for different topics. And in particular, I'm concerned about the budget process and making sure that we involve the community as much as possible, and making sure we aren't left with questions as we get closer and closer to having to approve a budget. And I don't see in the current structure the regular assignment of who's doing that research and bringing it to the table. And I also don't think it's necessarily fair to put that on the staff or just one council person. So again, I don't know that I'm saying I'm against having liaisons. I think for the staff, I think that might be a great idea. But I definitely want to advocate for at least, at minimum, a budget and finance committee. And I'd be willing to do some research on what that looked like previously or what it could look like again. But as a vehicle for researching and making sure we're all prepared and making sure that the public has an opportunity for more participation in the development of that budget.
Thank you.
Yep.
Jody.
I tend to agree more with Jen on this. I have been around long enough to remember when they had the committees, and I remember they would have department head meetings, committee meetings that were open to the public, and the public could attend those meetings, and they had the ability to interact with council and with the department head, whoever happened to be there, about concerns that they had, and they seemed to get a lot more, not necessarily, it's not that it made that department work faster or harder, it's that that communication line was open. And right now, when we have a city working session and the public gets to make a comment, it's 3 minutes and we don't interact with them at all. They just have to stand up there and talk for 3 minutes and there's no resolution to what they're saying. We don't tell them, oh yeah, they'll say, oh, there's a stop sign down over here, when are you guys gonna get that fixed? You know, it's like, okay, well, noted, but we don't even get a chance to answer to them, you know, or there's a big pothole over here, you know, and Jim could totally have it on the docket. It's like, it's 2 weeks from now, we've got that one coming in and that'll be done. And then they'll quit complaining because they know there's a resolution coming. We're missing that now, you know, because Jim's not gonna wanna take everybody's phone call. I mean, he probably does, but, you know, or the police department, you know, they're, you know, we've got a bunch of speeders down here, you know, what are you guys gonna do about it? You know, there's none of that communication right now really with the public. And those committee department meetings allow that, you know, whether we decide to do that as part of our working session where every department has like a half-hour block during this working session where the public can actually interact and we can communicate and the department head can communicate with them instead of just this 3-minute public comment type of thing. And I also really do agree that we have a lot of things that are going to need a lot more work and a lot more research than we can do just in this 2-hour time block. So,
Thank you. Kelly?
Thanks everyone for saying your thoughts on this. I know there's been some emails going around and it gets dizzying sometimes with all the emails going back and forth. So I really appreciate the time to talk about it and have this place where we can have discussion about it. I'm really kind of somewhere in the middle, which is where I am a lot of times. I really like Jody's comments that she just made about perhaps modifying the work session to have kind of blocks of time where we can have department heads. I mean, they're here anyway, and so why not engage with them more? I like that idea, and allowing and having that time also for the public to engage with the department heads and ask questions and have more dialogue. I think that I personally would like to see if there's a way that we can modify the working session, maybe in the ways that Jody's talking about, and maybe there's some other ideas too when we go around again. We can, if anybody has any other ideas, but I feel like I'm not sure if the working session model is broken. And I think it would be interesting, and it might be time well served for us to keep with the model that what we have right now for a couple of months and see how it's going, and then take a look back after maybe 3 months and say, is this working or is it not working? And then maybe armed with more information and more input of, it's not working, we should change it, or you know what, we've modified it and it is working, or we need to make a couple more tweaks. I do hear you, Jen, about the Budget and Finance Committee, and I do think that that's that could be one committee that I really get on board with creating specifically, because it is a huge topic and one that, as you said, requires an intensive research, and we should have ample time for public comment on that. I mean, on everything we do, but the budget seems to be the one that comes up, you know, every year. And so, yeah, I'm leery of doing committees just because I know how much time it takes. I've talked to other council members that were, you know, experienced when we had committees, and, you know, just because it takes more work doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it. It's just that as I look around the table, I know how much everyone has on their plate, and I want to make sure also that we're not stepping in too much into the work of the city staff. I mean, we're here to, you know, to legislate and to make sure that the rules are followed, and of course, you know, we all want to support the city staff, and at the same time, I don't want those lines to get too blurred. So So those are kind of my thoughts at this point. I would love to go around again and hear more input on it, but I really do, the Finance and Budget Committee, I think, is really important. And I really do like the idea of switching up the working session to be more productive, because I agree that in the past it has not been very productive. And I have felt that way, that at times I'm voting or I'm discussing something that I really don't know much about. So I think that we can work on that and make it better. And I'd kind of like to see us try to do that, and switch, to a whole new thing. I think that might stall us out too. So we have a lot of stuff to do. I know we all know how much stuff we have on the docket, so.
Thank you. Yeah. Pete, do you have any further comments?
I'm not adamantly opposed to the committees. I just think that the one-on-one is more efficient and reduces the layers of government, which I'm a proponent of. And I think that a working session such as we're having right now is extremely helpful. I'm learning more tonight than I have probably in 2 or 3 meetings. And I think we should continue or consider continuing this format. I think it's a very healthy expression of city business and input.
Teresa?
Yeah, there was a lot that I wanted to respond to. Working sessions, I like having our working session. I like Jody, I like your idea about giving the blocks to each department and for public comment at that point where we can actually discuss it and find out what's to be done, or not, and why, right? And have some good discussion. It makes me nervous personally to hear that, if there are going to be official appointments to different committees. I'm already on library, workforce housing, a subcommittee for short-term housing, planning and land use by appointment last time, and the planning board now. And that's just for city work, right? That's not all the other stuff I do as an individual. I also believe that the value of the working sessions and to have these discussions at night, because everybody else is working. And when would anybody attend any of these other committee meetings in the daytime? Of the things that I am already committee member or assigned to, 3 of them are already advertised through the city. They are public, right? But more importantly, the budget meetings are and should be made public, in my opinion. And if we do them at night, people can attend. As liaisons or assignments to different departments, we pretty much already have an idea of what budget items are needed, and the big one to crack is how to get more money for streets and public works projects, right? So that's a given. But to open that publicly would be excellent, because then we don't have to wonder about, who's on first, what's on second, somebody's on third. We could all come to those meetings as available and participate and speak for the committees or departments that we are working with as well, and hear what they have to say, hear what the public has to say, and also, what we might be thinking would be helpful. Just the more voices and eyes on it, I think it's a good idea to make those public. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Terry?
It's hard following Teresa because I usually agree with a lot of what she says. The one thing I guess I would say is it just seems to me like when we look at these roles as liaisons, everybody has a little bit different interpretation of what it is. And so I think, maybe part of the frustration is maybe we can make more out of some of those roles. Like, for example, just meeting with Jim a few times, there's ideas about, and some of the people in the public who've been very vocal and have engaged with me, which is a good thing. Just things like looking at the website and making sure we have information up there. It may not be something Jim's going to have time for, but that's something I can work with him to get that done. So I think a liaison role is a pretty important role, but then I also see, that it's again, it's a very big and complex department, and partnering with Teresa makes sense, even if it's just informally, because she's got the knowledge, she's working on planning. So I think that some of those relationships and committees that happen between the city council people can kind of grow up organically just based on who has the knowledge or the time, so that it's not just a few people concentrating in one area. So I guess I'm more for, like Kelly had said, going with the model we have, maybe with informal committees based on what we're trying to accomplish, and bringing people as we need them, so.
Thank you. Jen, do you have any more comments?
I guess I would say, I think, I am open to the idea of modifying the working session, to see if we can make it more productive. One thing I would say is just the mere fact, like your comment about the emails that have been going back and forth, to avoid a quorum, but to still have conversation between these meetings is the proof we need that it's not working as is. I think, like, if you think about all of that effort that we've put in, if I think about, okay, if I know I'm on 2 committees or whatever, 1 committee, and I know that 3 of my colleagues are on this committee and they're going to address that agenda item for next month, and I don't have to feel like I have to stay and participate in between meetings in every single agenda item. That is something that feels like a lot to me. And to Jody's point, I as a resident, that's what was frustrating to me in the budget process, was I didn't get to have an interaction or a discussion about priorities or get a chance to talk to city staff about what they saw was important. It was just my 3 minutes and that was it. And so I like this idea of finding a way. I'm open to what it looks like, I guess. I like the idea of maybe we try it out for 3 months with the intention of, between now and, the next meeting or next big working session, thinking about how do we structure it to actually make it more productive between now and then. So that's one. And then maybe we, if we think about establishing a budget committee too, then we can try a little bit of both, but maybe that would be too complicated. I'm just thinking about, I recognize that it's still January, but June comes fast, and I'm already thinking about these conversations should be started soon, and so I want to know what is our format, what is our process for getting that going, and yeah, those are my comments. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Jody?
I was just gonna say, if you do form a budget committee, because I am the council representative to the Resort Tax Committee, and part of their job is to educate the public on how the resort tax money was spent and to gather that feedback from the public on how they would like it spent in the future. So that is one of their roles. So I would, I know you're on admin, but I would volunteer to be on that as well, so that we have that continuity between the two and are working together.
To Teresa's point, I think maybe if we did do a committee structure, we could do it in such a way that our assignments to boards would correspond, or at least complement the committees that we would be assigned to. Yep.
Thank you. Kelly? No, do you have any more comments?
I guess for the comment about the budget meetings being open to the public, they have been. I think the one challenge, though, that we maybe haven't done, and if I'm wrong, then please say so, Lonnie, but I feel like I'm not sure that we've had those open budget meetings open to the public after work hours.
We did.
We have.
We had 2 public meetings last year. One was in the afternoon and one was in the evening, and they were posted. We did not have public, but the public was welcome to come. We went over all of the budget. Before we had those public meetings, council was invited to all of our budget discussion with department heads. Everybody was involved last year. I don't know why there was no public involvement last year, but we gave it plenty of time so that people could comment come to meetings on the budget. So.
Okay, are you done? Oh, Jim.
As a department head, what I hear you saying, and I agree, I've been with the city 24 years, I've been in this position for 7 years, and I find that one-on-one liaison has been worked better for me as a department head of getting our word out to the, but maybe I agree on a deal of, maybe at these work sessions, when you ask that liaison to give their report, then you give that time, a 15-minute, whatever time, to have the question answer with the department head about if you're not, you know, what is going on. I truly believe when that liaison gives a report and then it goes around there, maybe the question answer deal should involve the department head to answer some of those questions that some of you might not be aware of the one, but the one-on-one over the last couple of years to me has worked better in my position because I get to visit with that person, here's what's going on, and they get a better understanding. But maybe at these work session meetings, we got to put a time frame on it because believe me, in my service, I've spent 6-hour council meetings. And you don't get any more done in 6 hours than we do the 2 hours, but I think if there's a time frame and there's that question answer and the public input in that part, I think we would see that might be a better way to go with this deal is to, in these work sessions, to have that 15-minute deal of, okay, the Public Works Department, she gives her report, and then if there's question answers, I can answer, we can do it, and we move around the deal, and that way, everybody, I think that's a viable way of looking at trying to get more of this into the other council, but the one-on-one over the last couple of years to me has worked very good because Teresa has been a very good advocate for me and has gotten things, and I haven't had a whole lot of questions when she reports what we're doing, what's going on, but I think that's a good, possibly a way to look at it. And in that time frame, to keep them meetings, you know, there's a certain amount of time of public input, you know, all the things happen. But I think that's a viable way to look at maybe making this a more, rather than forming committees for every little thing, I think that's a very viable way to look at it, that at these work sessions, we have this time frame of public works, clerks, whatever the, you know, the police deal, and I don't know how they feel, that's just my feeling. I think that would be a viable way that, you know, questions and answers and the public input could be a big part of making it smoother and everybody getting on the same page.
And that's really important. So I would like to ask the rest of the department heads the same questions, and you can speak if you want. I don't want to put you on the spot, but your input is always welcome. So, Chief Strzok, do you have anything you'd like to share?
So I haven't really gone through budgets yet. I have sat through the meetings and everything and assisted former Chief Wells in doing so. Personally, I do prefer one-on-one interaction with the liaison, just as Jim said. I really don't have much more to speak to other than that.
All right, thank you. And Dennison, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add?
Mayor, members of the city council, I'm good either way.
Okay, thank you. That's nice. And Courtney, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I largely agree with a lot of what Jim said. You know, definitely putting time limits on things because we could go on, but I think having those working sessions where department heads speak would also cultivate more communication, you know, within the department itself. And it's also just a great time to just talk a little bit more about the little things that are going on that the public necessarily doesn't know that we deal with, but it's a chance for us to kind of say these small things each month that we go through and that we're working on a daily basis.
Thanks, Courtney. And then Lonnie, you know, I want everybody to know how much falls on Lonnie's shoulders. And she's pretty quiet in the background, but she's a lot of the workhorse that has been here. If I don't know what I'm doing up here, she's the one I ask. And when we say we want something from someone, she's the one that gets it. And it's not like she doesn't have other things to do than answer all of our phone calls and be very polite and kind to us when we make additional demands. And so, Lonnie, I want to hear from you if you have anything you'd like to share.
Yeah, no, I agree with the other department heads. One-on-one has been nice. When I first took this position, it was the standing committees, and it did take even more time away from doing other things and stuff. In admin, it's always budget. it's, doing that kind of stuff, how the budget is doing and process with it. But like I said, I agree. The one-on-one, I think flows better. I do agree with in the work sessions, having departments, the council discuss each department, what's going on, giving the public time to ask their questions as well. But I think it would probably work to make them more beneficial, I think.
Well, we'll iron out some of the kinks if we can find where they are and half agree on what they are, and we'll move forward and keep trying to make this whole process better. Which brings us to our almost final point before public comment, and that's the budget. And a former council person shared with me that person thought that if he were in my shoes, that he would bring up the budget first thing. And I don't want anybody, I've heard a lot of things over the years about transparency, the budgeting process, and I just want everybody to know the budget is online. If you go, I can't remember what the resources, is it resources? It's fairly easy to find.
Under departments, I believe, too. And there's a separate thing for budget.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to find. If you can't find it, you can call anyone at City Hall and look at it. And there's the most recent document that Lonnie uploaded yesterday or the day before is where each department stands in relation to the money that they've spent versus the money that's allotted. I know it sounds like everybody's very, maybe people don't think that enough transparency is there, but I'll tell you, it's a pretty tight run ship. If you think there's any extra Post-it notes in the supply closet, there aren't. I feel guilty for extra file folders. I think the departments have done a real good job running their departments. I don't know what is going to be the request. I don't expect it to be a whole lot different than last year, but those issues will emerge. I will do everything I can, and I think everybody on council will do everything they can to keep the community involved. But we want to know, do you have any issues right now? Do you have any issues from last year? Do you have anything you want us to look at in particular? And that goes for everybody here, everybody online, and everybody that hears about this meeting. Because we want to be transparent, we want to provide all the information, but we need to know what that is. Like Lonnie said, she did have 2 public meetings last year that no one attended, and we're going to do a good job trying to get that word out, and we want as much input as you want to provide. So with an eye on efficiency and giving our department heads, time to do their job. Okay. So with that, I would like to open it up for public comment. And so if you want to step up to the podium, please state your name. Please don't take more than 3 minutes because we're going to have to start banging the gavel. And be, what are the words? Civil and thoughtful.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, my name is Tara Mastel, and Courtney thought my experience might be helpful. In the past, I worked as the Director of Economic Development in Jefferson County, Montana, so for about 10 years, from 2006 to 2015. During that time, I did 3 different TIF districts. 1 was an urban renewal and 2 were industrial districts. The industrial are out of the city limits, the urban is inside the city limits. Just a little bit. So I live in Remington Ranch, so I'm not a resident of the city. I work remotely for Montana State University Extension. I have 2 kids in the high school, 1 that graduated from the high school, just so you know who I am. So Jefferson County has about 12,000 people. So I initiated 3 different TIF districts. Like I said, 1 was urban renewal, 2 were industrial, and we used Janet Cornish as our consultants. These are very technical, extremely technical. So even though I was a full-time economic development person, it's just so technical. And she, much like your consultant did, just helped guide us through the process and attended all the public meetings and answered all the very technical questions. I'll just say that our 3 districts worked extremely well. They're still in operation. And what they really do is, it's a rare source of funding that you don't have to pay back for really boring stuff that's essential, like roads, power, sewer, really boring stuff, but so essential. There's no debt. There's no debt. And it's just really what the nut of a urban renewal district is that you don't, instead of sending your tax dollars to Helena, you keep them in that district to do the things that you need done there, to make improvements. And that's what we did, and they just worked really well. And they're still going. We did 2 of the industrial districts or business parks, one in the north end of the county, right south of Helena, right south of East Helena, actually. And the other one in the south end of the county was outside of Whitehall, just south of the Golden Sunlight Mine. And the urban renewal district was right in the town of Whitehall. And we Whitehall is about half the size of Red Lodge and nowhere near as vibrant. But I mean, it's a vibrant community, but it's different. It's a different place. It's not a destination. It is a pass-through. They would agree with that. But we had 3 different projects that were about to happen. One was a project that we did. We redeveloped the Borden's building. And so we saw those 3 things, and we saw there's an increment, tiny increment, but hey, it was money that we didn't have to pay back. And the first project was replacing the football stadium bleachers, so for the school. So anyways, if you have any, I would love to help in any way that I can, just from my experience going through 3 entire processes.
Thank you.
And I think having no job in sight.
Thank you.
Yep.
Does anyone else wish to speak? All right, any public comment? Oh, Tim?
I was waiting to see if there was gonna be more public comment about the third mine, isn't? Thank you for your service and allowing this open forum. During the public comment, my name is Tim Weimer. I live up on Remington Ranch, and I consider myself a resident, even though I live outside the city. I think I've been here long enough. During public comment at the last council meeting, it was stated that there's been a large increase in the resort tax collections over the last 2 years. The caller used this increase as a justification to limit events. This narrative is also being used in letters sent to the council and the events committee. Please allow me to clarify the actual collections over the last 2 years. I'm using the third quarter as the example. This is July through September, and was chosen as the quarter with the events that have the greatest impact on the economy. From 2019 to 2021, we saw a 40% increase. And so if you just look at those numbers as presented in the resort tax collections, it does appear to be a very large increase. As a marketer, I wish it were true, but when we look at the actual numbers, it tells a different story. In 2019, when we voted to revise the resort tax, we added a 1% infrastructure tax, bringing collections to 4%. If we take off that extra 1%, the numbers change substantially. We drop to a 21% increase. At the time that the collections were also revised so that the businesses no longer took their 5% admin fee. So 5% of that remaining 3% brings us down to 17%. I think you guys got the email, and I do have the actual figures here. I'm just using them, or not using them, to try and stay within 3 minutes. So 17% over 3 years is decent growth. But before we start taking credit for doing a great marketing job, we need to account for inflation. The Consumer Price Index states that over 9% over the 3 years. Taking that into consideration, the increase in resort tax becomes 8.5%. If we annualize that, we're looking at 4.25% over that period, or for each year over that period. We must also take into consideration the effect of the pandemic on tourism in Montana. This is really big, people. The numbers across the state have been staggering, but every town, every CVB, every destination marketing organization knows this will end. We just don't know when. So the towns are staying the course, and they're leveling out or increasing their marketing efforts to make up for them when it happens. And this information comes from interaction with DMOs around the state. This isn't, something that we're made up and it's just random thoughts. I serve on the Yellowstone Country Board, and this is a constant topic. Our marketing agency, every marketing agency in the state says the same thing. It is going to end. We just have to take advantage and be aware. Sorry, I'll be really fast. And Mike Sherry also attends every Tourism Advisory Council meeting. Same message every time. Don't let this go. I hope these figures help clear up any misconception about the increase in resort tax and help you understand the contribution to our economy provided by events and the businesses that support them. I'd be happy to share any of my findings with the events committee if you guys would just invite us. Thank you.
Any further public comment in person? Is there any public comment online?
I have a quick
Any
comment. Can you guys hear me?
Okay. Yes. What's your name?
My name's Jeremy Battles. I live in North Hagen. I just wanted to comment real quickly on two things. Number one, the TIF district. I sent a more detailed email to the council and mayor, but I just wanted to clarify that the majority, you don't get money from nothing, essentially. So I heard it said that this is just money that would go to Helena. Otherwise, that's not the case. The majority of the mills are coming out of the school district. And I think that needs to be quantified in the plan, personally. Second thing I wanted to say was just a comment on committees. If you're going to have a committee, I would recommend that it is clearly and formally made. I think an informal committee is, that's just a waste of time. You need to have a charter with a clear purpose and a scope of what you're doing. An informal committee, just, that's not an official way for the public to interact. So I would just, like to encourage our city government representatives to formally create committees if they're going to create them. Your city government, if you create a committee, make it official. So thanks. That's all the comment I had. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeremy. Is there any further public comment online? Is there any further public comment at all? Yes. Step on her.
This is something so random, but it made me think. Marie Olson, I actually have boys down here at 7th and Hagen. I've witnessed in the last year 2 accidents right at that corner. It's a really bad corner. There's no stop signs. I've been talking about it for years, but I'm wondering what's the proper protocol to get a stop sign there? Should I talk to you?
You come see me and I'll show you the traffic Bible.
Okay. It just happened again last week. Then I look up and there's this accident.
Wednesday.
Okay.
Yeah. You get with me, you want to come up sometime, we'll go through what.
I'll find you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Any further public comment? Last call. All right. Does someone want to move to adjourn?
So move.
Second?
Second.
All right. Do we need to vote on that?
No.
Yeah, great. Thank you for coming. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Very